Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Chief Planners Podcast. It's Adam and Margaret, and we're joined by Taylor today. Hi, Taylor.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Nice to
Throwing
meet
you
you.
right into the fire here because right as soon as you get on, we're starting. We run a tight ship, as Adam just said earlier.
Love it.
Yeah, I wasn't explicit in my invitation and sort of what's going on with Facebook? Here, I'm gonna it was disconnected. Why can't you reconnect? Hold
Well,
on, guys. Continue streaming. Well, if you were on Facebook, you no longer are. I wonder why it was disconnected. I'll have to reconnect that another time.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, so my emails to Taylor, leading up to this, I was not explicit about like an arrival time except for just like the 7 o'clock. That's when we go. So just as we were having the little intro music going on there, Taylor jumped on. Both Margaret and I were sweating buckets, but it's really nice to see you. We weren't.
Yeah.
We are definitely not
I'm here. I was here. I'm ready.
Yes, ready to go.
And I didn't have to say anything and nobody would have been the wiser.
But now we just, first 2 minutes of it's about how, we've made some mistakes.
Yeah. Well, and
that's what I've learned through all this stuff. I've learned that you don't know until you try something and then you see what happens.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's right. So we had the tight ship, and now I was the loose lips that sunk it. So
yeah, you wouldn't have made it through the war, just saying. But it's okay.
Yeah.
Anyways, yes, today we're talking with Taylor Nicole. She'll give you a little bit about kind of where she's from and what she's doing, but mostly we're talking about local organizing. Taylor, I don't think would mind if I said she's kind of new to this world. And so we thought for our listeners who are kind of like thinking, they're rebellion curious, if you will, to talk to somebody who's starting it new and what she's caring about and what she can learn. Is that good, Adam? Was there more things that you wanted me to do for that intro? Okay.
No.
All right. Well, Taylor, this is pretty easy. Adam and I just mostly interrupt each other and let you sometimes speak. It works really beautifully. For the benefit of the audience, why don't you tell us kind of where you hail from and why you would be on this type of podcast?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me once again. And so I'm Taylor, and I'm from Collingwood, Ontario, and I grew up here, and then I went and studied at the University of Waterloo for environmental studies and biology, and I've traveled around to many different communities, various roles of kind of ecologist, teacher, tutor, whatever I can kind of try to do. And I just started kind of dabbling into this activism when I learned about Bill 5 and I learned about how there is so much we can do. If you just kind of believe that you can do something, you can do it. It all kind of started. I saw a friend of mine posted that he was going to protest outside of Brian Saunderson's office, our local MPP, about Bill 5. And I saw it a day late and I thought, oh, I missed it. This was my one chance, my only opportunity to get involved. And it was kind of this thinking where I was like, no, it isn't. You have free will. You are a grown person. You can do something. And so after seeing that action that he took, that he just was like, I think that this is something we need to fight for, I was like, yeah, we really do. So I put a call on Facebook and said, in search of anybody who wants to protest. And I thought, protesting is so inaccessible for so many people, because what I've learned is that everybody has lives that have so much going on and there's so much important things happening every day all around. And so I was like, how can we reach people not just for like 2 hours one day? So I thought, well, I'm just going to propose that we protest 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. outside of his office and see if I can coordinate enough people to be there when I'm not there. And then there was a handful of also crazy and passionate enough people that were like, yeah, let's do it. So for the week, there was from Tuesday to Friday, somebody was out there, and I think Olive Stainer, because that's where his office is.
Yeah.
had heard of Bill 5. We got noise complaints from the honking that we were getting in support of this. So it really all just started because I saw that somebody else did something. So I
Yeah.
guess that's one of why I'm here today, because I've watched what we've been able to do, our small group, and I've learned so much in
Hmm.
a short amount of time. And I've also learned, yeah, I'm still learning every single day, and learning how to care for myself in all of this as well, because you're only a good activist if you can show up for yourself, because then if you don't have anything to give for you, you really can't give for the cause.
Hmm. Well, don't spill all of your secrets at once, but
Sorry.
we'll back up a little bit. First off, shout out to Stainer Collingwood area, because when the Greenbelt issues were at their precipice, we hosted with some groups up there with Second Beach Climate Action Team and trying to think who else. I think Blue Mountain Watershed Trust. There was a bunch of groups that were involved in it now, and it was by far the largest gathering that we had in all of Simcoe County, and there was
Mhm.
easily over 200 people there.
Wow.
So it was. I know that little stretch pretty well. So can you just explain a little bit about Bill 5, what it does? Now I can fill in if you want, or
No, I've got the spiel.
got the
I've got
spiel.
it
Give us the whole
down.
spiel then, Taylor.
Yes. So essentially, what I have been telling people about Bill 5 is that Bill 5 is an omnibus bill, meaning there's a bunch of changes to proposed legislation packed in one place, and it's doing so many things. It's almost overwhelming because of how many changes that they're trying to make. First one that comes to mind is the Endangered Species Act. They're repealing that, taking away the protections from the animals that are already in danger and their habitat, which is, without habitat, there are no species, and that's the greatest threat to endangered species is habitat loss. So
Mhm.
they're taking away those protections and replacing it with a legislation that really doesn't have any legs to stand on.
Not comparable.
Yeah, like they're, I don't even know why they have it. It's just, it's not going to do anything. They're saying, a nest is the only place that needs protecting is just the nest, like where
Mhm.
someone is. But you need a whole host of different ecosystems and just like a large area for all animals to have like an actual life and to live and
Mhm.
to raise
Mhm.
their babies outside of this circle that they're claiming.
Yeah.
So
But
that's
if you
one.
keep the one tree with the nest and you clear cut the forest, I mean, come on now, that's habitat protection. Sorry, it's just
Exactly.
ridiculous. I had to say something.
Yeah, well, it's that's where it's like they've been the example of like, you have a bedroom, but you don't have a kitchen and you don't have a bathroom and you don't have any stairs, and you don't have a house if you just have a place to sleep. That's not all you need. You need
Yeah.
more things than that.
Yeah.
And to me, it just is like the Endangered Species Act, like. And when I had a phone call with Brian Saunderson, one of the interesting things he said is he said to me, "Oh, a lot of the conservation groups that I've talked to, they don't like the Endangered Species Act because it's not robust enough." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, exactly." So what do you mean this new one is nowhere near what we would need? If anything, we would need greater protections and a better understanding of ecosystems and how they're so connected to each other, because we already have so much habitat and ecosystem fragmentation in the province, crossing highways and suburbs for these animals that, like, if you have a patch of forest here and then all of these barriers in a patch of forest there, like, they're not connected, they're not working
Mhm.
together, so they're
Mhm.
just isolated islands.
Yeah.
So that's the one part of Bill 5
Yes.
out
There's
of.
more. There's more, folks.
Yeah,
There's
just wait, everybody. You thought that was bad. They
more.
thought that the kicker, I would say, is the special economic zones,
Hmm.
which you may have heard, listeners, you may have heard of. If not, I'm here to tell you they should be renamed special destruction zones because that is what they are allowing in our province. They're essentially, there's no size or limit to them, but they're these zones that the government can decide. There are trusted proponents that are allowed to do whatever they want in that land, that they don't need to follow regulations or laws, that they
Yeah.
can be exempt from these quote unquote red tape or
Yeah.
slowing things down. But it's really
Including
more.
municipal law too, so people understand. It's not only provincial law, it's your local council would also be potentially overridden by this.
It's essentially saying that they're going to say, you know what, we actually just decided we don't want any laws in certain spots because we want to do things that would not follow the laws that are in place. Like
Mhm.
why would you need to erase any laws or to override any laws if you were going to do things that were, within the legal systems that we have? So that's what's really upsetting to me is that these zones, they are just dangerous, frankly. Like there are so many things like the Drinking Water Act, and just I think of like if there is no accountability or if there is no rules, then what incentive does that give to any industry or developer to follow any rules? Like
Mhm.
they have nothing to support them except being this free pass. The government is giving a free pass in these zones
Mhm.
to develop industry, landfills, homes, whatever they see fit. And it's essentially what I'm seeing is it's just going to be basically a giant for sale sign on all of Ontario's nature.
Yeah. And
'Cause
I'll
it's
just add I'll just add another point with that. So the bills are read in the legislature twice. For
Mhm.
those that aren't aware of how bills move through Queen's Park, they're read in the legislature twice, and then they go to committee, which is made up of various members and is proportional to how many seats. The majority government's going to get so many seats in the committee, and da da da. Da. And committee is generally the process where the MPPs would add in change policies to kind of make it more robust. And they through committee there was challenges to try to get the government to be more specific about where these special economic zones could go or not go, or who are trusted proponents, or what are the types of projects that could happen in special economic zones. And the government outright refused to provide any sort of definitions, limits to where they go, how big they are, what kind of development can happen, what kind of rules, what kind of proponents, that whole bit. And then I'll just add the third part with Bill 5, which has a lot of the Indigenous communities rightly upset,
Mhm.
is that it does, well, not only does it kind of test this idea of free informed prior consent, but it also makes it so that archaeological assessments aren't mandatory anymore. And that is completely against treaty rights. That's like, a developer wanting to dig up a graveyard of your ancestors, and just, that's fine, right? That's not the level of protection we have for um, graveyards that are outside of the Indigenous community, but this is kind of what's going for. And that would be pretty terrible. So there's a lot of pushback from Indigenous communities, rightly so, and allies about what that means. And of course, there's also concern that these special economic zones will go more into Indigenous communities, far north communities,
Mhm.
where no one is really watching. The media is not as close. They're not as close to Queen's Park. And is that going to go into these projects that are really disastrous for the water, habitat, medicinal lands near Indigenous communities? Sorry. So there's
Yeah.
lots of problems. Adam's sitting back in his chair thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a couple of broader sort of framing questions that are popping up for me. I mean, there's the obvious connection with Trump, right? And that's part of the justification this government is trotting out for these changes that they're proposing, is that they're necessary to be able to fend off the impacts of the tariffs on that they could have in Ontario. But I think there's like a couple of interesting things for me. One is that like really scrapping environmental protections and regulations in favor of private for-profit business is kind of exactly what Trump is doing
Yeah.
in the first place. So the almighty dollar rules first and foremost. But then I think like stepping back even more. So I mean that's kind of an interesting like race to the bottom justification,
Yeah.
and do we really want to do that in Ontario. Um, and I mean, it's just an interesting way, I think, of thinking about your home,
Mhm.
which is as a place that really only serves that really only has a value in terms of what you can extract and sort of do away with from it. That you don't have to take care of it or nourish it, or that there isn't anything of value in it that you want to sustain.
Mhm.
Which is crazy because this is
Yeah,
the land that sustains us. If we want
right.
clean drinking water, we need forests and wetlands to filter that water and to go through all these ecological systems. So to say like we, only get the value from what we can destroy, it's like we're actually just depreciating the value of what we have and we're not appreciating what it is doing. Something I like these lands are occupied. Like these trees and these animals, they're doing so much for us just by being, just by
Mhm.
existing as they are. They are doing so much for us, and we don't see it, or we maybe don't feel it, or aren't as connected to it. And they're tapping into that. They're making us believe that we need to, extract, extract, extract before what? Before we have nothing left to
Mm.
extract from? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the other thing is like the economics of this of extraction. At the end of it, you've transformed that space into something that's entirely denuded of value. You've transformed that value into something that's abstract in that monetary sense, right? But that you can't actually eat or actually do much that's useful. I mean, you can trade it for something perhaps, but the value will fluctuate. But then in a special economic zone like that, where all regulations and protections and any care or concern that you might have for the land is negated, and you are able to just pump out however much pollution without any care or regard for the impacts that it might have. What you're left with at the end of the day is actually a massive cost,
mm-hmm.
right? So the companies that have operated there, the people that own those companies have extracted that extracted that abstract, that's a mouthful of marbles there, the value from it and gotten wealthy. But what they've left is a massive cost that has to be carried by the rest of us, and primarily those animals that their homes are
Yeah.
gone.
And
Anyways, I'm
they
getting a
won't
little
be
philosophical
there.
here, but
They
sorry.
won't be there, and they won't be there if we destroy their homes. They
Hmm.
won't have anywhere to go. We saw it with the coyotes in Toronto that they took away Ontario Place, and now they're go moving into the cities, and there's just no. If there's nowhere for them to go, then they won't have anywhere to go.
And the
Mhm.
small dogs and cats are paying the price.
The vet bills, the vets are benefiting though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Not to be crass about it, but I think just for the benefit of the listeners,
yeah.
I wish that everybody could understand the environment as, in a way of stewardship, in a way of just because that's the right thing to do. But I know a lot of people are looking at like, well, what does it benefit me? And sometimes we're really removed from that. But the science about how a healthy environment benefits humans is actually very clear. You can contrast it with humans that are in high polluted areas, and you can see the level of cancers and diseases and high stress. You can compare it with how people that have access to green space have greater mental health benefits. You can compare it to economies where jurisdictions that have strong environmental protections also tend to be high GDP. So there's lots of science that directly benefits humans, even if people can't appreciate a bird deserves a place to live. And I always hate translating that, but for some people, it's really true. They're like, we don't understand. Like, what do I care if the forest 5 kilometers over? Well, it is a sliding scale, and kind of what both of you said is there's what is the end? Like, what is the end game here, and where do we stop? When do we know that we've hit a limit? Because as far as I can see in any of these bills, which we have to also kind of keep in mind with strong mayor powers, which have now come to almost every municipality across Ontario, where the municipality, the mayor, under conditions regarding housing and a few others, can actually get kind of what they want to do without having the consensus of council behind them.
Who
So
needs democracy?
I mean, at this point, we don't even need a government. They're just deciding, actually, we want to do all these things, and it's like, no.
yes, and also so all of these things make you go, where are the, I know people get kind of this narrative about red tape and government and gosh, the red tape, blah 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 blah. But also red tape is redundancy for the right reasons. Sometimes it's if a hospital doesn't have multiple backup generators, doesn't have a plan when the power goes out, the people that need power are going to have a problem. So sometimes you need to have these built-in redundancies, because at the end of the decision, at the end of the problem, comes somebody's life, comes somebody's health, comes, it's not just this, it goes into this abstract bin of like, well, I don't know what happens with it. No, we know that at the end of every government decision is a person, a family, children, aged people, like
Communities, of
whole
people.
communities. So we're not just dealing in the abstract here. We're dealing with what actually happens on the ground. And where is the end to that? Is it when we've decided that everybody can have their own house? What does that look like? Is it when house prices get to a certain level? Like, are we just going to continue down this path of insanity until we hit an ecological limit where everything fails, and then we're going to have to try to figure out how to purify water that's actually really expensive? Like, you know what I mean? Where is the vision where they say enough is enough? And I don't think they've ever thought that question through.
No, and it kind of also saying, when I forget who, I think Adam, you said something of like the cost will cost more in damages. That for me, my first thought this whole time was, if you pave over every wetland and every forest, we have so much rain in Ontario, and it's getting worse with climate change. Where is that rainwater going to go? Into the basements of these homes that we've just destroyed all this land to build. And it's like you're creating your own problem at this point. You're taking away the natural protections from flooding, and you're exacerbating the problem in the name of more housing. And I can't wrap my head around that. I'm like, haven't we seen what happens when we pave everything? There's nowhere for the water to go. And I was just canoeing, and the whole forest was flooded. And so like these soils are already oversaturated with storing the rainwater that they are storing. So if we don't recognize the value that that has, and kind of what you were saying, Margaret, about ecosystem services is what I've learned that they're called, which is the things that nature does for us, whether it's the awe and beauty and the mental health, or whether it's the practical functional water filtration, flood management, temperature regulation, things that can't avoid. We can't run away. We can't be like, actually, I think I'd like to stop the rain now. It's too much. We're just going to stop it. We're just going to pause.
Not the air purification. I think I want dirty air today.
Well, that's actually so. One of those running away from it examples would be air conditioning. It's a great example, I think, of how. Well, no, it's not just creating cold air for you. It's pumping out a ton of hot air too, right? So it's every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Go ahead, Margaret.
I was just going to ask Taylor another question, but first, I was also going to point out that if it kind of sounds like there's more centralization of power, both within mayors and within the government, it's true. It's not us being, bombastic and alarmist. We're trying to say that like this is kind of sliding. And then another bill that's coming up is Bill 17, and that would allow the minister on his own to decide zoning rules in your community, to decide that parts of the Greenbelt, parts of Oak Ridges Moraine, like there's no plan that they can't touch. So they're expanding the ministerial zoning order powers, which is only one of the things. But I guess what I'm interested in, because Adam and I have been at this for a while, Adam a little bit longer than me, and what was your experience growing up about, I mean, you went into an environmental program, but I'm curious about growing up in these kind of times, because you're in your 20s.
Yes, 28.
You're in your 20s. And so what was that like growing up, thinking about environmentalism and activism, and what was kind of on the what was the narrative going around that when you were growing up?
It's a really great question, and it's kind of interesting because it feels a little full circle, because I live in a subdivision, and that where I live once was a forest, and I recognize that, but I didn't know that growing up. You don't know, you just think, oh, this is my house and this is where I live. And I remember being a young kid, maybe 10, 11, 12, and there was a forest behind the subdivision I live in, and I noticed one day that they were tearing it down to build more houses. And I just had this sense of like panic of like, you can't take away this forest. This forest is doing so much. Like, this is where me and my friends hang out. This is where I go to find peace because I feel, there's so much noise. And they did. And then the crazy part is they didn't even develop anything on it. There were some permits or reasons why they couldn't, so they just flatland this forest, and it still sits today empty, and it's kind of now a grasslandy-ish sort of setup. And I just remember thinking, like, who's talking about this? Like, why everybody seems so concerned with what's happening, and I don't feel like anyone is paying attention to the trees, because so I kind of, and then I went to high school and I learned you could go to school for environmental studies and you could learn how to, like, you could just learn about it. And I thought, and it's still that core memory of the feeling, that feeling, and it's back, this feeling of like watching places that you love being taken and not, and then nothing good coming out of it. Like,
Mm,
that's where I think it's the kind of kicker is that, like, obviously we do take up space and we do need space to do things and infrastructure, but it's ultimately like, um, yeah, I felt a piece of me was taken when I was a kid and I never got that back. And now I'm with Bill 5. When I drive around and I see all these for sale signs, residential development opportunity, 50 acres, and I just look out at these forests, I feel that same, like, and it's kind of like, who's speaking for the trees? Who's standing up? Who's saying something? Because they don't have the words and language that we have. But I
mhm,
feel like I've always had a connection where I'm like, oh, you know,
mhm.
they matter so much and they do so much and I love them so much.
Yeah.
Um, and I always have. And I'm a basket weaver. I weave baskets, and I, like, not a very good gardener. But I think, like, I didn't really have many adults in my life to show me a nature connection. And so I tried to build that myself with my friends in that forest that got torn down. And I think that taught me from a young age, like, um, that there are things that you don't get a say necessarily, but now I'm like, no, you do get a say. Like, I get to have a say. I've grown up. I have a voice now. I can use my voice and my education and my position to try to do good things. And I think little me, who just saw this injustice and got upset and didn't know anything except to just learn, that's kind of where I went. Is I saw, was upset, and then I was like, okay, I will learn more about nature, and then hopefully this has led me here on this podcast.
Yay, welcome. I have a follow-up, Adam, unless you have something to say.
Go for it.
I was curious because we every summer for the last few summers have had student interns,
Hmm.
usually high school or college students, and it's always interesting to hear what their experience of the environment and environmental education is. And so yours is coming from a place of loss, really, right?
Yeah.
And that seems to be very common with a lot of the students we have, where they go to the libraries, they watch the videos about forests burning down and the orangutans and climate change coming and everything's getting is broken and this is
Hmm.
all disastrous. And well, Adam and I are rough. We're the same age, I think, right, Adam?
Yeah, I think
Ish,
so,
ish.
roughly.
What I remember was a totally different thing. This was the time when there was all of these programs to invest in education and invest in nature, and so um, I came from a time. Now, Adam's experience is obviously going to be different, but at least what I remember of my education
Hmm.
wasn't this feeling of chaos and loss. It was this kind of stewardship and responsibility kind of vibe going on.
Hmm.
And I think that's what, so when I think about the loss, I think more about preservation,
Hmm.
more of like we had something going here that actually worked. Like even though it wasn't perfect, it kind of worked, and we had a moment in time for decades where we were actually trying to do the right thing, and now it feels like we're in a sliding scale. And your perspective is coming from, we are losing, we're already losing so much, we can't afford to lose anymore. And although I share that, my background is coming from a, oh yeah, like I was not raised with that kind of narrative at all. And so I hear my sons talk about it and they're like, yeah, everyone just knows the environment's screwed. Like that's just kind of like, it's just this resignation that wasn't a thought in my generation's mind at all. I don't know. I'm assuming you don't think the same, or you think the same, Adam, or did you have a different experience?
Um, I
This is
hadn't
gonna
thought
be.
about it from that perspective, actually. Sorry, what?
I was gonna say this is gonna be a good one because when you do the sides, usually something like really old man profound.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I don't have any old man profound stuff. I hadn't thought about it in that way before. Um, I Yeah, no, I don't know. I think I've always sort of, I don't know how much of this is colored by my current um, perception of things, though, which is probably pretty likely. But I think I've long felt that we're losing something that's really sort of integral to who we are, and that's not just externally sort of focus, right? Because like really, when you get down to brass tacks, we are nature. Like we're you can't disconnect us.
Yeah.
As much as we like to try, and as much as these fucking morons sitting on their billions of tech dollars pretend, right? Like, no, you're not getting away from this shit. You're
No,
not going to get out of it
you can
alive.
outrun the floods and forest fires. Like you
Yeah.
Yeah,
can't.
But
yeah.
Mars, what about Mars?
I
Come
mean,
on.
that's even less hospitable than the world we're creating for ourselves here, right? So I don't know what kind of idiot thinks that that's the Xanadu to escape to, but well, I do know what kind of idiot thinks
Mm.
that, but we don't need to go down that road. Uh, the like, well, maybe a little bit we do. So I mean, I think part of the loss that it is a very sort of profound loss, I think most of us grapple with. I think a lot of us don't understand it. A lot of us self medicate in all kinds of different ways, not necessarily drugs or alcohol or whatever, but screen time is a big one nowadays. All kinds of different things, right? So we have all these little crutches that we use to get through some. And Taylor, you briefly mentioned it, the ecosystem services, and you mentioned that sense of awe and connection and that sense of the sublime that nature can bring to us. And the sublime is that overwhelming sense of awe in being part of something that's bigger, right? And that is what has served as the basis of every sort of incredible thing we've ever done as a species, right? You walk into a cathedral, and that's a sense of awe. That's a sense of the sublime that you're getting there, or you find yourself on a mountaintop, right? Whenever I think of the sublime, I always think of the Two Rainbows guy, YouTube. No, is it?
Oh
Am
yeah,
I
I know.
aging myself?
I was
I
thinking
know,
Oh,
more
I know.
okay.
I tried to smile politely to be
Oh
like
my
that. I
God.
don't know.
Okay.
your
You
reference
gotta,
is too old, Adam.
yeah, you
Age.
gotta. So, um, this just beautiful soul. I think he was hiking in Yosemite, and it's one of the first like hyper viral
Mm-hmm.
YouTube videos. But it is quite old. But he comes across a double rainbow, and that sense of awe just bowls him over, and all of it comes tumbling out, and you can really get it in that reaction. It's a beautiful video. You'll love it. Look it up.
I will.
Uh, if I can, I'll maybe if I remember, maybe I'll throw a link in the show notes here. Just unfortunately, the guy he died of COVID actually during the pandemic, which is really sad.
I didn't
But
know that. Thanks for
yeah,
bumming me out there. Double
well,
read, guys.
As if we
rewatch
weren't
it.
already bummed out enough, Adam. As if there isn't enough.
Yeah.
I am holding on to my moments of joy, Taylor, like I've inventoried them, and Adam has just ripped one out of the bouquet.
Sorry. So this was actually like one of my focuses in school was on technology and specifically the difference between um, technique, like technology the way that it used to be, which was a poiesis. It was like it was a meeting of the other, really. So when you're woodworking with hand tools, but with general things. So like there's one of the famous woodworker named a guy named James Krenov, and he explains how, and most really good woodworkers will also explain their relationship to their craft and the materials that they use in the craft in similar ways. But the wood really does speak to you, right? You can hear it, you can
Oh,
smell it. There's
that's
all kinds of
beautiful.
things and it'll tell you when it's ready
Yeah.
if you know how to listen to it. And Taylor, you were talking about how trees and like they're
Yeah.
not able to speak in the same way, but if you know how to listen to them, you can learn what they're saying. You can hear them. Anyways, that's technology, sort of in its old sense, and then modern technology. And Heidegger has a really good piece on this. But modern technology is a forcing upon nature, where you demand that it conform to what you want of it, and so there's a power dynamic in play there. And I see this not only in the tech bro and the type of technology, that modern technology that we have, which is going so far as even to create a world outside of the world, right?
Mm.
Like virtual reality and all this sort of stuff, and AI and these sorts of things. But I also see it in the types of authoritarianism and authoritative tendencies, authoritarian tendencies that we have in sort of,
Everything.
I wouldn't call Doug Ford a strongman, but he's got those tendencies. And the more that power is consolidated, and this
Hmm.
is one of the things also back to being able to listen and hear what the other is speaking to you about, which is really at heart what democracy is about, right? It's supposed to represent the disparate voices and interests of the whole. But the more that power gets consolidated upwards and into a very small clique, the more that those voices are lost, and the more that sort of assertive control forcing upon solutions that don't actually reflect the interests of the whole
No, that's kind
occurs.
of like what we're saying. To what end? Like, what is the goal? What
Hmm.
is the vision? What is the purpose of all of this special economic zones and fast tracking? They're saying it's, the Donald Trump of it all and the fear mongering of it all, but it's ultimately like you can't you can't become your enemy in the name of the fear of the enemy. Like you have to stand your ground and dig deeper into the integrity that we have instead of dismantling it and rushing through these insane bills, and not allowing the people who all have spoken, thousands and thousands of all of Ontario who knows about this. No, not a single person. Like, I have a funny story to tell you. When we were doing our Brian Saunderson protests in Stainer, a gentleman came over and starts talking to us, and we explain everything to him, and he's kind of like, okay, like, I don't know, but like, yeah, I don't like that, what you're saying. And so he actually ended up living not that far from the protests. And I guess he went into his house, looked up Bill 5, didn't like what he saw, came out onto the street across the road with his chair, and he had a MAGA hat on and a cardboard sign that says "Stop Bill 5," a cigarette in his mouth, and a bottle of wine on the side of the road, and he was protesting Bill 5. And
I kind of love this
I'm
guy
just
despite
like,
his mega hat.
I was like, what is happening? And it was this kind of weird clash of the worlds. And he came and talked to us a couple of times, and I kind of told him like my political views are for the good of all and the harm of none. So like then this bill is just the harm. There's no good for any Ontarian that is out of this. You're just losing your natural spaces. You're losing the environment that keeps us safe and healthy. You're losing your ability, your opportunity to connect with nature, because like you were saying, it I really started from a place of lack. I started from a place of feeling like it was being taken away already and not having a strong foundation, because my family didn't have a strong nature foundation. And then but now going to school for it, and now I teach for a school and I do a lot of outdoor education, and I'm getting the opportunity to introduce nature to kids at a young age in a way that's like, look at this. Like today we saw a dragonfly nymph, so like the aquatic stage of a dragonfly, and it was like covered in clay that had hardened, so it was like basically it was going to die, it was going to burn on the beach and like not live. And so we went and washed it off in the water to clean it off. So we like washed the hardened clay off of it. And like it was the most magical thing. This bug is like so terrifyingly like just beautiful, and it's this big. And that moment of the girl and I, the student and I, saving this little bug, I was like, I feel amazing. I feel incredible. My day, this is 9 a.m. I've done my day. I saved a bug. I don't have to do anything else today, because of just that simple, like you're connecting and you're caring for something that isn't you. And that if that dragonfly nymph had died, my life continues. I still have, going on. Like it's this almost like indirect, the indirectness of nature, the passivity of it, almost, that it's there and it's doing so much for us and we're not paying attention to it, we're not noticing it, but it's still doing it. So I'm kind of like, how do we wake the people up to connect to this nature in any way, in all ways, like the studies that have shown listening to bird sounds, that's your nervous system. When your nervous system doesn't feel safe, you won't be able to hear that, but when you do hear the birds, it's like a biological symbol. Oh, you're safe here because the birds are safe here, and the birds are telling you that it's safe here. And it's like, that is so huge for me in my own personal healing, like birds and bird watching and like connecting to birds. If they're not interested in you, then your vibes are off and you need to check it out. You need to check yourself. Because birds watch people more than people watch birds, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Well, and to bring that into other contexts as well, what they've shown in long-term care homes is like long-term care homes that have animals and real plants. The people use less medication and are happier. And so I think there's something innate in us that wants to connect. And this is why you see videos where they rescue a dolphin or they interact with an orca or something like that. They just go viral almost all the time because there is this sense of like, oh, I'm still connected to that. And I wish, Adam and I wish we had easy answers with how do you make people remember? Because it's not that they never knew it. There's in our DNA and our part of our survival, as Adam said, like we are a part of nature. Our bodies remember that, even if our culture is saying, don't even worry about it, just forget about it, like just take it all down. There's a need for the remembering. And I think that sometimes it's in the stories, it's in the education. I too was kind of turned into thinking about environmentalism back when I was thinking about teaching, right? Back Camp Wanakita, YMCA Camp Wanakita, camp counselor there for to get a part biology credit. And I got a week off school and I got to teach youths at risk that were from Hamilton. And we went through ECDC ICA, which if I can't remember all of them now, but each letter stands for a part of like energy, adaptation, and we just taught kids about how nature works, and they were like, wow, this is so great. So the awe is still in them. Adults kind of get stuck in this idea of like, okay, time to step on some heads so I can get further up the chain, as if nothing that you've stepped on matters, right? So I do hope that we can figure out how to help people remember, but I know it's also not a quick task.
No, and I think it's remembering and then also like empowering as well, because our nature, like our natural side, like you were saying, it's all within us and it's so powerful. And I think that's what I've learned in connecting to the trees and the birds and the water, on a level that's just like No, not like taught to me by a person, but taught to me through experiencing it for myself and trying it out and feeling it and seeing it. But like you say, that takes time and that takes opportunity and that takes accessibility. And this bill is making nature even less accessible. Um, and it almost feels on purpose. It almost feels like they're trying to take away everything that actually does matter and say, for like you were saying, Adam, the kind of control piece of it all. Um,
I think,
yeah.
I think another part of it that seems intentional to me is part of that sort of centralized control means that people who want to play, they need to sort of make nice with the people who have the power to do right by them, kind of thing, right? So like the politicization, so the trusted proponent, who will that be? Who's like you said, there's no details on who on how that determination would be arrived at. So whose back is going to be scratched to become a trusted proponent? It might be getting a little bit sort of in the conspiracy theory direction, but it's setting up the possibility, or at least increasing the possibility of corruption, I think, quite dramatically in
Huge.
Ontario. And
Definitely.
that's again, I mean, that's again, it's exactly what Trump is doing, right?
Well, we haven't
It's
had
the
any
same way.
corruption scandals in Ontario, have we? I don't remember there
No,
being
not with the
many.
government.
I think it's been pretty good, Greenbelt, Ontario Place, it's been fine mostly. Anyways, I know Adam has some questions that I think you want to ask her, but I wanted to get at one thing before you get into your questions, Adam, because I'm
Oh,
assuming
oh, my questions. You're right. I gotta find them. Hold on. Sorry.
I will handle this. This is good.
Yeah.
This is good. We're a team.
Yeah.
Now, you were quite audacious by just saying, and I think that I use that in the best possible way. Like, hey, I just want to do something and I'm going to do it. And I don't know if I'm doing it right or whatever else. So, what did you learn about yourself that might be helpful to other people in taking that brave kind of step of saying, okay, well, I need to do something?
I think I learned that while you're doing it, it'll feel like while you're doing it, while I was doing all of the things that we've done, all the protesting things, I've learned as I'm watching it happen, I'm like, should have done that, should have done this, could have done that, would have done this. And that used to be kind of crippling and like overwhelming and make me want to stop doing it and say like, no, if I'm doing it wrong. But then taking a step, I had so many kind people be like, I've seen the impact of what just even doing it wrong or doing that it will have, and the ripple effect that it will have of doing it that I wouldn't have had if I had done nothing. And I
Hmm.
think it's kind of about putting your ego aside and not being good at everything and realizing you don't know what you're doing, but that when I decided to just do it, it's like it's not about me. It's about other things. And so if my attempt has even just the smallest good impact or inspires somebody to consider what they could do, I think it's about realizing like I can't solve all the world's problems and change everything with this one protest or two protests or whatever we do, but in doing something you are showing people that they can also do something, and then we all have different gifts and different talents and different abilities and opportunities, and I think it's about taking the opportunities and also trying to create them for yourself of like, because I'm pretty fearless in the sense that I'm like, I have no issue rallying strangers to come stand outside of Brian's office with me for 8, 9, 10, 12 hour days or whatever it is,
Hmm.
Hmm.
because I'm like we have to do something. We can't do nothing. I can't. The thought of doing nothing is just like,
Bothersome.
yeah, it's panic inducing because it's like this. It's the analogy of like if someone's pushing a cup off the table, if you don't actively stop that, then you're essentially helping it, fall all the way off. And
Hmm.
so I just realized that I also realized something else I learned was to follow the leads. And that, like, so the reason I also did the protest the way that I did is I listened to, I think it was Environmental Defense that did a webinar with a bunch of really cool speakers about Bill 5 kind of in the beginning.
Yep.
And something that Tim Gray said was, he's like, go to your MPP and tell him that, get a group of friends and follow him around and tell him you're not going to leave him alone. And I was kind of like, okay. So then when I saw that my friend went to protest, I was like, oh, we could go protest. We could just go for like a really long time and just be really annoying. And like, maybe then that'll do something. And so, um, yeah, it was just kind of like, if you get the feeling that you know something is right, then like just explore it and then see if you can find other people who also
Hmm.
want to do things, because that's what I've also learned, is meeting amazing people
Yeah.
who are just as inspired and who have different versions, like one of the women like got the petition kind of going, and someone else brings like the energy, and like someone's like the dependable, always there, reliable one. It's kind of like this team
The
vibe.
roles.
We're not setting rules. At one point when we were protesting at Queen's Park, we went the day of the public hearing, and it was pouring rain like the whole day, and it was so like, and I feel like people were looking at me like telling them what to do, and I'm kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do you, I kept being like, what do you guys think? Like, I was trying to put it back to the field, and at some point I looked at my friend and she's like, so what's the plan? I go, this is not a dictatorship. I don't know the plan. What do you do? And then if you tell me what you think, I can tell you what I think, and then we can make plans moving forward. And I think it's because people just, you got to work together. You gotta
Hmm.
find um, find other people too, because it can be overwhelming to feel like you're the only one doing something when you're not. You're not. But when I was like first gonna do something, I was like, well, this will only work if I have other people. I can't stand out there myself 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's not possible. So I think for me, I took on this huge undertaking, never organizing a single protest in my life, not having any idea of what to do, but then just trying it.
Yeah. I
And
think you had lots of rich advice there. I know Adam's begging to get at the questions, but I just want to say a couple of things. One, earlier, you reminded me of the phrase, and I'll try not to butcher it, but I can't do all the good the world needs, but the world needs all the good that I can do.
mm,
So that was one thing that made me think of that. And then also, for people that are listening or watching, not everybody is going to feel comfortable organizing a protest. And we're not suggesting that everybody has to organize protests. But I think what is the best marriage is when you have a skill, when you have a passion. Maybe you're a really great caricature artist. Maybe you write music. Maybe you know how to set up websites. Like, there is something that you can do that
yeah,
is something that's a unique contribution of yours. And if you don't feel like doing a protest, we're not asking you to do a protest. You might just want to go door to door and talk to your neighbors. You might want to drive. Like, there's so many lanes. So I think just take the example from Taylor and feel audacious. Don't expect an invitation into it, because really the people that are doing it are doing all that they can, and we need more. So if you think there's one way you could do something, like, I'm going to write a letter, I'm going to go visit somebody, I'm going to write a song and put it on social media, I'm going to paint something, do
yeah,
it. Just do
yeah,
it, because
yeah.
it will find the audience. And even if you think it's not going to matter, it does matter. They all add up. So I will pass it on to Adam, who's going to ask the questions.
Okay, just one
Dum,
quick
dum, dum.
observation, but that I might be preempting my or scuttling, I don't know, my question. It sounds also like what you guys were both saying a little bit, like make it yours, make it your own, make it
Yeah,
meaningful to you and who you are, because that also then, well, meaningful, right? It feeds you.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, yeah, I'm not. I feel like we probably got to this first question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. What advice would you give to a young person or a younger person who wants to make a difference?
my advice would be probably believe in yourself and believe that you can do a lot more than you would think. Like that your one word or your one poster or whatever it is that you do will reach the right audience in the right way. I kind of have this weird firm belief that like my feet will walk me where I'm supposed to go and my mouth will say the things that I'm supposed to say, and it's kind of not even up to me. I just like have this belief that if I'm doing the good thing and if I feel that it's right, that like it's worth exploring, and that you, this young person, or all these young people, like you're worth exploring your talents for the good, because we're taught about productivity and make yourself like money and all these kind of capitalistic values, but ultimately it's like what heart do you want to put out into the world, and figuring out what that is like fun and exciting, and it's scary but in like the best kind of a way.
Hmm.
That would be my
Agree. Focus more on who you want to be rather than what you want to be.
yeah, and who and like what it, and also don't be afraid to be different than the people around you, because I know that we can kind of get caught in the traps of everyday life and busyness and thinking, I don't know, and just and getting lost in taking care of everyone else and every other thing. And I think it's like what I would say is make sure you're taking care of yourself so that you can learn yourself, so that you can learn what you have to give when you're ready. And if you're not ready to give something in this exact moment, that doesn't mean that you won't ever. It just means that you need to look inward and figure out what are your next steps to be able to reach that place where you have more capacity to give. Um, that's what
That's
I would
great.
say.
Okay, so there's two more. How do you think about failure, and how do you respond when it happens?
Ooh, you're hitting the juicy questions, I see. Um, I mean, for me, one of my friends told my friend's mom has a saying of like, you need to feel safe to fail. And I think that failure is inherently a very scary thing. And I know learning through these protests, like I have had a hard time with in retrospect what I would have done differently. And I've had to reflect on it and not be so hard on myself, because I could look at it two ways. I could look at it, oh, here's all the things that I didn't do that I had the opportunity to do, or here's all the things that I did do, with the opportunities I created that weren't there for me, but I made them happen. Like, for
Hmm.
example, the Doug Ford came to Wasaga Beach, and that was in the middle of our week of protesting, and I heard about it the night before, and so I went, and the police were there, and they were trying to scare us off the thing, but it was on the beach, and I stayed on the side of the road where like the cars were, and I told the other woman who I was with to go around to kind of go to the back, and I wish I had went to the back as well, because I could have made more of a difference trying to be disruptive and behind. But it was my first time kind of even doing anything like that, and the police were there and they were intimidating, and there was all these men in suits and they were whispering into their watches about us because we're a few people with some neon signs saying "Stop the drive." Like it was overwhelming, and I kind of, I didn't freeze, but I didn't think it through, I guess, fully. But my kind of one of my mentors, she's like, no, Taylor, like you delegated, you sent someone back there, like just because you weren't back there doesn't mean you didn't do it right. It's just that you learned this time, like go where the cameras are, be, you can be braver or be more bold, than you think you can be. But I wouldn't have learned that lesson if I hadn't just tried something in the first place. Like I
Hmm.
was getting people to honk as they were going by to try to interrupt the press conference going on. But I think it's like you're going to make people uncomfortable because a lot of people don't want to engage in these sort of things. They like living in the bubble of like everything's fine, everything's great, everything's
Good.
good, we're just chilling. And so I think it's like the brave thing to do is to try, and with trying ultimately comes failing. And I'm saying this to myself so I can hear the words and resonate them. Like it's better to have tried and failed than not tried at all. And so even in just kind of this going forward with all this stuff, I'm like, I don't really know what my personal or what our kind of team next steps are, other than connecting with more like-minded people and just trying to figure it out. But it's like I just have to not stop trying, I think, is the point. And you will
Keep
you
going.
will fail,
Yeah.
but that is where you look and you get to pick all the lessons and go, okay, next time I'll do these things. Or I will impart this wisdom to this podcast, is go behind the cameras, go where the cameras are. If you have the opportunity, go where the cameras are.
Yep.
Okay, last one. Actually, and then one quick follow up, which is how people can, if they want to join you or get involved, how they can do that. But first, the
Mm.
last of our three regular questions: what's your greatest fear for Ontario, and what's your greatest hope?
My greatest fear is what I told you about when I was a kid, is that they're going to greenlight all this development, tear down the forest, and then nothing even comes of it. Um, because I think that just is so. I mean, there's so many fears, but I think it's, yeah. My fear is that we will that we will destroy, not we, they, or the powers that are attempting to do this will get to do it. But my greatest hope is that more people don't want this to happen than do, and there's so much more power in like loving something and fighting for the love of something than for the loss of it. So my hope is that Ontario will force the hand of the government to stop this madness. Um,
Right.
that would be my hope.
Which I think we're done committee work now, and I think it's going back for its third and final reading this week, correct?
Tomorrow morning, I heard.
Yeah, tomorrow being what day? June 4th, for those that are going to be listening later. So you'll probably be able to know whether it's passed or not very shortly.
And if people want to get involved with your work, with your activism, what's the best way they can do that?
That's a great question. I don't have that answer. I don't have. I think what I need to do is make a platform that people can reach. That's something I haven't done yet. So maybe I will do that right at this after this call. Um, I'll
I
make
mean,
a Facebook group.
The short form is that if people want to get a hold of you, they can get a hold of Ab and I, and we can through our emails and forward it to you. For the purpose of tonight's recording, that's an easy way.
yeah.
Okay, yes, but I do. That's the thing. There's always more things to do, but
Oh yes, there's always more. There's always more.
And all right, so we're sort of at time here. And Taylor, thank you. And I'm just noticing your name did I get your name wrong?
my name on Facebook is Taylor Nicole, but that's my middle name, so my last
Oh,
name is Deacon. So both are
okay.
right. They're both
Okay.
right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was a pleasure. It was really nice way to pass an hour on a Tuesday evening.
Having me.
And we will be back next Tuesday at 11 a.m. We're going to be speaking with Jarvis Strong from the Escarpment Corridor Alliance about their work advocating for a wildlife corridor in actually in your neck of the woods, Taylor. Yeah, so join us then, and hopefully we'll get the Facebook live stream working again. I don't know what happened there. Also, if you appreciate this podcast, please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you use. Won't be Spotify because we're not on Spotify because of
Don't go into your rant.
and Neil Young.
Here we go. All right.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
And
you,
thanks
everyone.
again, Taylor.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Taylor.
How do I go on to the next slide?